Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Tuesday. It's Daryl here. It's bright and freaking early, man. You know it. It's 3:30 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, today I want to talk about rehab, and I want to talk about Kodak Black. I'm going to start right there. This morning I'm going through the news stories, and I come across a story about Kodak Black and rehab and the Rolling Loud festival in California. Okay, now most of the people that watch my channel, just like me, probably don't have much of an idea who Kodak Black is. I'm not familiar with any. I actually listened to one of his songs right before I did this video, and it's a pretty cool song. He's probably about half my age. He's a rapper. There's a lot of differences between the two of us, but we have an awful lot in common too. And the link will be down below. I came across a story that he just did the Rolling Loud concert festival in California, and his promoters, the people around him, were very concerned. They had people around him trying to keep him safe and clean because he was ordered into a drug rehab after this festival. And I started looking up his past, and this has happened before with the same festival where he got in trouble and he was ordered into rehab. And even though there's a lot of differences between me, if you look at me, my age, my complexion, where I grew up, I mean, there's so many things you could list, so many differences between me and Kodak Black, but there is so many things that are similar. This is what I want to talk about first. When I first got into rehab, I've been clean and sober. For those of you who don't know, I've been clean and sober since October 23rd of 2006, about 16 and a half years. I've been completely clean and sober. And I was in and out of drug rehabs and detoxes. First you go to a detox for about 6 days, then you go into a rehab. 13 times before it stuck, before I stayed clean. And as I was reading about Kodak Black, I had some things I wanted to talk about. Before I get into that, like I said, I saw so many, at first glance, we look completely different. Here's this rapper, famous rapper, touring the country, touring the world. Like I said, so many differences, but we have so many things in common. When I started going to NA meetings and AA meetings, and this is one of the things that people that go there notice pretty quickly. You look around the room, and there's old people, young people, rich people, poor people, women, men, just people picked out of every facet of society, and we're all sitting there in a circle or a square or whatever, and each person goes around the room. This is how it usually works. And I led like a 50-person group here in Connecticut for about 4 months, and I sat in front. I got voted to sit in front of this group. And there was 2 times that famous people, one was a sports figure and one was a TV personality, actually sat in, went to the meeting. And nobody said anything. Nobody made a big deal out of it. Because when you hear as people go around the room and they talk, you realize that we all have the same story. These are just people. They just have a different job than you and me. The same things went wrong in their childhood, the same problems, the same issues, the same stresses. And you see the emotion on their face and the tears, and you stop looking at them as celebrities or famous people, like you want to get a picture, a selfie with them, or an autograph. After 5 minutes of listening to people talk in these meetings, you wouldn't even consider that. You would never even consider asking them for an autograph or a selfie or anything like that. As I read Kodak Black's story, I'm going to get more into that in a second, and a couple of similar things, and my thoughts on Kodak Black and his rehab. This just a couple days ago, I came across my ex-girlfriend passed away a year and a half ago, and she worked at a big high-scale, top-end rehabilitation facility here in Connecticut, Mountainside Rehabilitation. And I knew that there was famous people. She knew the famous people that were going there, and she was in recovery too. And she never told me the name of one person, because I was curious about famous people going there. There's a lot of movie stars, TV stars, and musicians that live in Connecticut. And Mountainside serves the whole tri-state area, Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York. And she would never said a word to me. Just recently, just 2 days ago, I opened up this book. I hadn't opened this book up in 2 years, 3 years. And there were emails that I found from this facility, Audrey's emails. And in these emails, there's mention of famous people. Now, I started thinking about this. I could do a video. I mean, it crossed my mind. I could do a video talking about famous people at this rehab. And, and I'd probably get a lot of views. And as quick as that thought came in my head, it went back out. If there's anybody watching this that went to Mountainside Rehab, that's a famous person, I'm going to burn these. I will never, seriously, these are going in the trash. I could never do that. I could never mention the names of I could never do that. Back to Kodak Black. So the Rolling Loud Festival, he's played that, just finished wrapping that up. And his team had people around him. Oh, a side note here, you probably heard the term, the festival, Rolling Loud. The first thing that comes to your mind is, the stereo systems in the cars and the speakers, rolling loud. Actually, rolling, I don't know. So most of you, if you're younger, if you're under 40, you probably know this. If you're over 40, you probably don't. Rolling is a term for being high on MDMA or ecstasy. Rolling, it means a whole different thing to other people. So the term rolling loud means something totally different to other people. Anyway, he's had issues before, court-ordered issues, where he had to go into rehab, and he got out, and obviously it didn't stick. And so his team had people around him. I'll have the story right down below so you could read it yourselves. His team had people all around him, a doctor, a dietitian. They had somebody right next to his side with him 24 hours and 24/7, making sure that he didn't use. And I thought about this. And I remember back when I was an addict. And I thought about if my family or somebody had put somebody right next to me to make sure I didn't use. And the addict mentality, I think that would have made me, even if no matter how much I wanted to stay clean, I think that would have made me want to use all that much more. That's the thing with an addict. You use no matter what. You use if you're happy, if you're sad, if you're angry, if you're trying not to. It's a loss of control. It's like there's another voice telling you what to do. So he has these people around him. And I started thinking about how he hasn't had too much success so far. And I had a very similar situation with that, being in and out of rehabs and detoxes 13 times. These rehabs and detoxes became normal to me. It was almost, I hate to say this, but it was almost like a vacation. Once I ran out of money, I got in debt to certain people. My life was a mess. I'd go into rehab. I'd stay there, and it was like a vacation. And I would be clean for those months. It's easy to stay clean when you're inside a facility like that. And it's a great life. But as soon as you come out, here's the thing, you go back to your old life. And I picture Kodak Black and the concerts and the music that he's around. And I feel for the dude, because he's going to have a very hard time staying clean. Because being a famous person like that, it's almost impossible for him to completely change who he is. Because that's what I had to do. I had to get rid of all my friends, the people around me, the music I listened to, the color of clothes I wore, the TV shows I wore. I stopped listening to the music I listened to for most of my life at 40 years old, because it all reminded me, it was triggers for me. All the times I used it, and I heard this music, and I started thinking about Kodak Black and these concerts and the people around him and the rush of being on stage and the music he's made when he was using, and how hard it's going to be. In my mind, I don't know how it would even be possible to stay clean. And I thought about these festivals and the term rolling loud, rolling. And I thought back to when I was going to concerts and the whole atmosphere. And I thought of two specific times. I had gotten a limo for me and my friends, and back then I was also dealing. So I played the big role where I got, listen to me because I'm not bragging here. You got to hear the whole story before you start thinking that I'm bragging on this. One was a concert, Shea Stadium in the mid 90s, Eric Clapton and Elton John. And I got a limo and I went to that concert with my friends, and I had a large amount of Colombian export, let's call it. And the same thing happened. I was supposed to meet Ozzy. I had won backstage passes, me and my friends, to sit down with Ozzy after the show. The Mama I'm Coming Home tour, that tour, because he was supposed to come to my friend's house and meet the family. He never did, but he sent a limo. But that's another story. And both times I got limos to go to these shows, along with a large amount of the Colombian export. And I never told anybody this. But at both of these shows, we get there, and by the time I got there, and me and my friends got there in this limo, I was so tweaked out. I didn't tell anybody this, but we got out of the limo, and I intentionally got separated from my friends both times because I was so paranoid and so nervous from all the stuff I ingested that I couldn't handle it, especially with Ozzy. Sitting down and meeting Ozzy in this state, I ended up going back to my limo both times. I never saw the show. I never met Ozzy. We went in before the show started. We're wandering around, and I purposely got separated from my friends. And at Shea Stadium, Eric Clapton and Elton John, I was lost. There was probably 100 limos in the special parking area, and I couldn't tell which one was my limo. And I kept going up to different limos, knocking on the window. And people were freaking out. The drivers, the chauffeurs were freaking out because I was just going from one limo to the next, freaking out. I couldn't find my limo. They all looked the same. And I was extremely intoxicated. And I found it eventually. And I sat in that limo throughout the whole show. And there was bottles of liquor in the back. And after I'd used up all this Colombian export, I started drinking the liquor. By the time my friends got back to the limo, I was throwing up all over the inside of the limo. That was the show. I never told them. I made up this story that I was in there and I saw the show and all this other stuff, but this is the first time I've actually talked about it. With Ozzy, it was the same thing. I was so nervous about actually sitting down with a famous person with Ozzy. I just used up all the stuff I had on me, and I went back to the limo before the show even started. And it was a good 4 or 5 hours later. My friends came back to the limo and they had all autographed tour books signed by Ozzy. And they were like, "Where's yours, dude?" You know, because I was the one that set this all up. And I was like, I didn't want to ask for one, man. I didn't want to act like a fan. You know, I said this. And the drugs had prevented me from even going in and seeing the show in the first place. I never made it into the show. I ended up sitting alone both these times in the limo all by myself. And I think about Kodak Black and his attempts to get clean, and it's going to be very hard for him because you have to change everything. You have to basically rebuild yourself from the ground up. One of the best things I did was change my phone number and cut out all contact with anybody I ever used with, anybody that was ever around me. And it wasn't because they were bad people, but it was because they were triggers to me. And to this day, these people still think I blame them. Because these people still think I look at them as the trouble. And it's not. I knew the trouble was me. But seeing them, hearing their voices, hearing the music and all that stuff, it's a trigger for me. It's the only way I've managed to stay clean. And I think about Kodak Black, and it's going to be very hard. I don't have an answer for this. It's so deeply rooted. It's like a second part of you, a second voice. You know, I always picture the angel and the devil, and the devil's the addiction. And you clearly hear this voice saying, "Well, you could do this." And I think about Kodak Black and they have this person guarding him 24 hours a day. And if that devil was on my shoulder and I was in that situation, I would do anything in my power to get away from that person and use. It's just that voice that's always there. So I wish the best to Kodak Black. And if for him and for anybody else, it is possible. Rehab, recovery is possible, without a doubt. I've lived the best 16 years of my life, without a doubt. The last 16 years have been the best, the most prosperous, the happiest years of my life. Recovery is possible. Have a good Tuesday.